Welcome all of you. Welcome all of you here today. And as noted just now, this is being recorded. We're going to go ahead and get started with a few updates. First, I will hand it off to Nancy with ACT-IAC, who will share some ACT-IAC news. And then we'd like to give Jeff Pollock at OPM an opportunity to talk about their request for feedback on the human capital management standards. And then we will hand it off to Perrin Ashmore, who's going to moderate the session and introduce our guest speaker today. So Nancy, if I can hand it off to you.
Yep. Hi, good morning. I'm Nancy Delanoche with ACT-IAC, and I just wanted to give you a few updates of what's happening with the organization and things that you might be interested in. We have two major events that are coming up this winter. One is the Digital Transformation Summit. It is next month, held in Reston at the Carasoft office. And then the Shared Services Summit, which we have been co-hosting with Shared Services Leadership Coalition, SSLC, for a couple of years now. And that is on March 31st at the Crystal Gateway Marriott in Arlington. Registration for both events are now available and open. And also we have, I'm not sure if you're familiar, we have an ACT-IAC Innovation Awards. It's now open and accepting applications. If your organization has an innovative, like really cool program or project or initiative, and you're interested in nominating that, let me know. I can send you the application form and give you more information about that awards. The awards, the finalists and awards will be handed out at the ACT-IAC conference in May. This is the Emerging Technology and Innovation Conference that will be held in May at Cambridge, Maryland. That is it. If you have any questions about these updates, let me know. Send me a message or an email, and I'll be happy to send you more information. That is it. Now I'm handing it over to Jeff Pollock from OPM.
Thanks, Nancy. I appreciate it. So I just wanted to take a couple of quick minutes of your time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the posting of the Human Capital Federal Integrated Business Framework, FIBF, to regulations.gov. I'm going to go ahead and post in the chat the link to the regulations.gov website. And basically, for the first time, the human capital management area has exposed our business and data standards to private industry. And we're doing that for the purpose of gaining feedback to understand better where there are gaps in our understanding of business services, capabilities, data, where we can improve, suggestions for best practices. And I guess the long-range goal of doing this is to start engaging more with our private industry partners on solutions for federal agencies where it comes to human capital management. So you may be familiar with the HCBRM, which is the full functional life cycle of human capital management. It talks about not only the employee life cycle, the hire to retire functions, but also gets into some of the supporting and enabling functions, such as workforce planning, human capital strategy, data analytics work, things like that. So we are not at this time posting all of the standards for the full HCBRM on regulations.gov. We're only posting the standards for that employee life cycle. So that includes functions that include talent acquisition, talent development, employee performance management, compensation and benefits, as well as retirement and separation. So this is your core kind of HR work. And again, what we're looking for, not only from the private industry, we're also requesting this information, this feedback from the federal government itself. But we've done that already. We have avenues to get federal feedback. What this is an attempt to share this information on a more global forum and get that feedback from private industry. So we posted these standards on January 9th, I believe, just almost exactly 2 weeks ago. and they will be posted for another 2 weeks until February 8th, when the comment section will be closed. I can personally attest to the fact that I would love to hear from you, even if you can't make the February 8th. These are living, breathing documents that we will be constantly reviewing for best practice feedback. So if you can't make that February 8th, if this is the first time you're hearing about it, feel free to reach out to my group at any time after that. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that this is not something that OPM or Human Capital is doing in a vacuum. We are part of a larger organization that GSA oversees called the Business Standards Council. So this is happening within the grants community, the travel community, the FM community. So we are just now following along with things that other folks have already done, and we're happy to be part of a large, robust community, again, trying to develop standards for implementing policy, law, regulation. So thank you for your time. You can reach out to me at hrlob@opm.gov. That's the easiest, quickest way without making any spelling mistakes on the email address, and that will be sure to get to me. Happy to take any questions or relinquish the microphone back to you, Terry.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We appreciate it. I will now hand it off to Perrin.
Oh, thanks, Terry, and thanks. And I just want to say, Jeff, I applaud you for the work you're doing. As a former enterprise architect, I just can't express how important the BRM is to everybody who's doing implementation. So it's a great thing. I hope everybody gets a chance to take a look at some excellent work. So,
great,
well,
thank you.
I want to add my greetings to everyone. Thank you for joining us, and truly it's a pleasure. My name is Perrin Ashmore. I'm an industry executive here at Oracle, but prior to joining Oracle, I played a lot in the personnel, payroll, and systems world. And it is truly my pleasure to introduce Brian Whittaker. And many of you know Brian from his day job as the Chief Innovation Officer at Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. But today, Brian's going to be talking about his non-day job. I don't know how to express it, Brian. I hope you'll tell us all. But some really amazing work, and it's truly inspiring that Brian will take us and walk us through this work he's done, the humans of public service. I was introduced to this through an article in FCW last August that was shared with me by Marlena. And I just have marveled at it ever since, Brian. And I thought about it a lot. And Marlena used this word of, it celebrates, and it's just so simple and elegant what you've done, and kind of, and again, I hope you get a chance to talk to us about how you've moved forward and what brought you to all this. But with that, I'll just turn it over to you, Brian, and I know you're going to walk us through everything, the behind the scenes look at HOPS. So thank you again, Brian, for doing this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and this opportunity to share. This is really a passion project of mine. And, to build on what you mentioned, I would say by day, Chief Innovation Officer, by night, Humans of Public Service founder. By no means would I consider myself an expert in content, but I saw an opportunity here and I ran with it. But let me get these slides up and running, and hopefully you can see my screen. Give me a second. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Right, going into slideshow. All right, you still with me?
Yep.
All right, great. Okay, so first, a little bit about me. I'm Afro-Latino. If you don't recognize that flag, that's the Panamanian flag. Both of my parents are from there. I was born in Ohio, though. Please don't hold that against me. We're great people. We're really friendly. I'm a little brother. I have 3 older sisters, a husband, a father. I've got a 1.5-year-old named Ellie, and she's got a little sister coming in June. My family's all public servants. My dad was in the Air Force. My mom taught for a little bit. My oldest sister's a nurse, middle sister's a cop, and then the youngest used to teach as well. So It's basically in my blood. How I managed to avoid it and work in industry for about 9 years, I don't know, but I found my way. Education, formerly computer engineering technology trained. Any RIT Tigers out there? Anybody ever heard of that school? It's up in Rochester. It's really, really cold. Only visit in the summer. Business, I got my MBA at University of Maryland, go Terps. And as I mentioned, my career, I started off in industry, went through a program called Inroads that helped place minority youth in industry. Started off at Lockheed Martin, transitioned to consulting, started consulting for the government, and then found my way in. So I've been in the federal government for it'll actually be 7 years in June. I started in 2016. My passions, music. I love discovering music. I don't play, but if you have a new artist or an artist that you like, feel free to drop that in the chat. I will check it out. Martial arts, I grew up doing Taekwondo. Right now, I just watch. I am very out of shape. I don't know how I ever did any of that, but that's a little bit about me. That's my story. And of course, beyond celebrating public service, being passionate about public service, these are the things that aren't readily visible. So that's a little bit about me. My inspiration for hops. So I joined the government in 2016, and I think a lot of people were surprised at the direction that our country went into, right? There was a rhetoric and a sentiment around public service that really shifted. Language like draining the swamp, the emergence of titles like the deep state. Prior to these things, there were instances like healthcare.gov that just really, lowered the trust in government overall. I had a conversation with a friend that said, when I was talking about humans of public service and trying to define the mission and the vision and how I wanted to increase trust in government, they made a statement that, hey, maybe there's certain communities where their trust didn't really even exist. And I was like, wow, that's a valid point, but being a public servant, being in the DC area, this sort of lack of trust really hit home for me, right? I'd say even now more than ever, it's very easy to take a swipe at government, if you will, whether it's in the media or what have you. But the lack of trust is definitely something that really influenced me to take action and left me feeling like, how can I provide a counterpoint? If the common point's to take a swipe at government, how can I share something positive? The government does great things and we just don't hear enough about it. The next thing, so May 25th, 2020, I think everybody could probably remember where they were when they heard about the death of George Floyd, or actually saw it. I mean, it was on TV all the time. And, this experience rattled me, right? And I feel like it changed me. I'd say prior to George Floyd, there were other instances of situations like these. And just seeing this one really made me start asking myself a different set of questions, right? Prior to this, it was, when is someone going to do something? When is this going to stop? Who is going to change this? When is this going to change? What does it take for marginalized communities to be seen or treated differently? After George Floyd, I started asking a different set of questions. What can I do? What's my circle of influence? How can I make a difference? Is there a way to sort of uplift or show marginalized communities in a different light? And, after reflecting on what my sort of area of influence is, a data point came forth that really moved me and sort of created some focus. And that's this, right? The Partnership for Public Service, they published a report that basically said in March of 2021, only 23% of senior leadership in the federal government identifies people of color, right? And my first instances and thoughts were, gosh darn it, I'm glad they bundled all the people of color together. Like, what is the percentage of African American, Asian American, Latinx, right? And how can we do better? You know, later the census results showed that about 40% of the population in America identify as people of color. So there's definitely some room here. And, you know, being a federal executive, this is the space, right? This is where I can hopefully provide some influence. This is the space that I know. And what I really hope is if we can sort of shift these numbers of diversity within senior leadership, how can that eventually impact policy that creates more empathy for marginalized communities so we don't have another George Floyd-like situation or instance, right? So between the tragedy, the data points, the general lack of trust in government, I had to make a move. To be candid, my original idea was, hey, I would love to do a summit. We're in the middle of the pandemic, everything's locked down. I would like to reward and sort of celebrate some of the marginalized leaders in public service and say, hey, you know, we celebrate you. We want to support you. We need you to stay, and we need others here. I wouldn't need to, you know, in early 2020, I wouldn't need to rent out a hotel or a banquet hall. I wouldn't need to get a bartender and cater this and do all these things, right? But slowly I dialed that back and said, okay, Brian, you don't have a brand. How are you going to find these people? Nobody even knows you. Like, why would they do any of this with you? So enter Squarespace and Humans of Public Service, right? I know there's a lot of time between 2020 and 2022, but I became a father for the first time, and I've, in conversations with a bunch of different close friends, I tried to come up with a low fidelity way to celebrate public servants. I hadn't necessarily seen anything else specifically for public servants like this, but Humans of New York was one that was pretty awesome, right? I don't know if you remember that popular account. I think it might have came out in the early 2010s, but a gentleman walks the streets of New York with an amazing camera and amazing writing capabilities and interviews people on the street and gets awesome pictures and tells their story. How about we do the same for public service? So leading up to, I forgot to mention that my dog cat is, hold on 1 second. If that isn't human, I don't know what is. But so fast forward to May 2nd, 2022. In alignment with Public Service Recognition Week, I created a backlog of, you know, starting out with just a few friends and friends of friends that were willing to tell their story, share their picture. I also, I took the opportunity to sort of create a draft rather than necessarily going to my organization and saying, this is the idea of what I wanted to do. I shared with them an example of what a couple profiles look like, and they were like, hey, yeah, this looks fine. So, you know, with approval from my day job, I started sharing posts, you know, given all of my inspiration and a lot of iteration on what the mission should be, at least what it is for now, is our mission is to share the stories of marginalized public servants and build trust in government, right? You know, taking to heart that nuance of increasing, sometimes there isn't any there. How can we build that trust? So with that said, we can talk about how our vision is sort of manifested, right? What I'd really like to see in the future is a government where leadership is reflective of the diversity of America. We talked about the 40%, right? 40% of the US are people of color. How can we do that and replicate that in our government leadership spaces, right? And to what I mentioned earlier, you know, we want to diversify that leadership so that services are accessible to underserved populations. How can we have empathy for those communities that, are often considered forgotten, right? The values here, and I hope that this shows up in Humans of Public Service, because I'm trying, but I want to make sure that these are sort of the anchor for all the things that we do going forward. But authenticity, right? Like, how can people show up or have a space, whether it's through telling their story or maybe eventual Humans of Public Service programming? How can we come as we are? How can we show up authentically in a way that isn't perceived so distant and far removed from the everyday citizen or the everyday constituent, right? How can we, prioritize equity, not only in our content, but also in our delivery of events and or programming? And of course, naturally, making sure we keep it human-centered, right? Let's make sure we are in service of others, that we're actually catering to the needs of people. And how I've been thinking this through specifically is, if I want to move the needle on diversity in government leadership, I want to make sure I'm well aware that I don't have all the answers. How do I go to the people and hear about the pain points that they're experiencing, the needs that they have, and drive the programming and the solutions based on what the people that are nearest and closest to the problem have to say? So that's why you see human-centered there. All right, a little bit about HOPS. How does it work? We received our 501c3 status last year, so super excited about that. We run on Squarespace forms. It really makes life easy. I'm sure the question comes up, how do you have a day job, a toddler, and do this at night? Thank goodness for Squarespace. Here we go, right? So I have a form where public servants can be nominated. Feel free to go to the website now and check it out. You can nominate a public servant. It's only maybe about 3 questions or so. We reach out to that public servant via an email, having you, the nominator, CC'd in hopes of getting a response. And they tell us a little bit about ourselves through another Squarespace form, about themselves through another Squarespace form. And we write a narrative, send it back to them for feedback. They send us a picture and we post it online. It's not a very heavy lift, but I hope one day it will be very heavy. I hope that folks today feel energized about public service and just flood my Squarespace form with a lot of awesome public servants that deserve some shine. So please make this a heavy lift, and I'll find a way to automate. So one quick tidbit is that when we originally launched in May, we launched on Instagram, right? And why is that? Twofold. How could I go to where the public is, right? How can I sort of break up the doom scroll of bad news and things of that nature, and show the shining face of a public servant that is proud to serve their community and do some good? What I quickly learned is that it's a little bit harder to gain traction on Instagram. I think their algorithm is mainly focused on video, which you'll hear a little bit more about later. But I think it's harder to gain traction on Instagram and have people share their stories when it's not as much of a professional setting of a social media account. So with that said, my first month was on Instagram. I chatted with a friend. They were like, you know what, you should give LinkedIn a try. I took it over to LinkedIn and it took off. And some of these metrics here, I think, will show that. So of our 3,800 followers, I would say about 3,400 are on LinkedIn. And one thing that I really love about it is that I feel like, to a degree, LinkedIn's a safe space. It's not a Facebook. It's not a Twitter. There's no opportunity to feed the trolls. At least I haven't seen many trolls on LinkedIn yet. And that's sort of these are sort of the conditions that I want to foster and continue. It's more of an uplifting sharing of information place rather than someone, people offering up a lot of political opinions and dissent. But since May 2nd, we've shared over 80 plus stories, and engagement has been great, right? We've had over 2,000 reactions on Instagram, 47 comments, a bunch of reposts, and even more of that engagement on LinkedIn. And I'm really, I plan on continuing to invest in that LinkedIn support. It's just been a great, really great environment for sharing these stories. I haven't done this alone. I have formed some partners and collaborated with some really exciting and I'd say mission-focused organizations. AvidCore has been a great help. They're a communications focused small business. They've helped with some of our interactive videos and some strategy. FC at Bethesda, Emerging Leaders, they've been excellent as well. Considering how we can collaborate in this year and potentially help humans in public service scale. There's a few others here that you probably recognize that have either been reshared on humans of public service that tap into local government leaders, or even something as amazing and inspiring as the Sammys Award winner is some of the content that we've shared. But on the right, these are definitely some of our more prominent partners that we are engaging with this year, from the African American Federal Executive Association, right? How can we tap into those, let's say, marginalized leaders within government and highlight their membership? Same thing with Muslim Americans in public service. And of course, last but not least, the NAPA Fellows. And I'll touch on how I hope to incorporate NAPA later this year. So the focus areas for 2023, I'd say are really, well, actually 2023 and beyond, I'd say are threefold, right? What you've seen to date is content, and I'll dig a little deeper into where I want to go with that this year. I would say next is engagement, right? I still haven't given up on that summit dream. I still want to do that. I would love to do that in 2024 if I can get the sponsorship. I'm already, as you can see, compiling the stories of leaders across government. But I hope to pull that off in 2024 and maybe get some experience with events on a smaller scale this year. And then last but not least, research. That's that human-centered value showing up, right? Making sure we engage the people closest to the challenges to identify barriers and potential solutions. Sort of a combination of the engagement and research focus area that I really want to dive into, maybe starting later this year, but definitely next, is I want to find leaders that are, let's say, equity focused, right? How can we have a conversation about that? How can we have a conversation around what leadership looks like in 2023 and what type of leadership government needs? Right? And who are these people that are doing it? I would love to connect with them, find out what some of their best practices are, and then just shout it from the mountaintops if at all possible, because I do think in these times, I think diversity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging are important now more than ever. There's been research about the costs of losing talent within government that I think mentioned, if not, the cost range of 16 to 200% additional cost in losing and replacing a federal employee, depending on how many degrees and years of experience that they have. How do we avoid those costs? How do we keep talent within government? I'm not saying people need to stay in the same agency, but at least keeping it in government is a positive. So those are some of the aspirations for the coming years. But this year, what I really hope to be able to execute on is really diversifying the type of content that we're sharing, right? The humanizing portion, that's what you're seeing today, right? You get to see us share stories from state and local government, different marginalized communities, variety of agencies, right? So I think we're creating that foundation there. But what I want to build on is sharing job opportunities, right? And I'd really like to get creative as to how we show these jobs, how we market these opportunities to folks outside of government, right? I think more often than not, I come across job postings with a link and maybe a sentence, and the earnest is on, and the work is on the applicant to read through a lot of government speak to determine if this job is for them. How could we reimagine that? So that's something that I'm looking into and considering exploring this year. I would say the next is the pathways into government. So you might ask, well, what's the difference? I think opportunity is really communicating about the job, but the pathways, I really want to tell the story of people that have, come into government, maybe left government, come back to government. But what was the moment when they knew a career path in public service was right for them? What attracted what attracted them to the position, and how can we maybe spark more of that interest in those outside of the public service space? How can we, for lack of a better word, rebrand public service, what it is, what it looks like to attract the public servants of the future? So that's what we're looking at there. And last but not least, I've already mentioned the summit. So maybe at the end of this year, how can I start promoting the summit, what it is, and what the opportunity is for public servants? One thing I meant to mention, the pathways. This is where I think the partnership with NAFA will truly flourish, right? And that's the National Association of Public Administrators, right? And these folks are either in academia, industry, but have spent some time on public service or in public service and have interesting stories to tell. Here's a breakdown of my 3-month plan, right? So I talked about the different forms of content that I really want to explore. These are the timelines that I'm sort of marching to. The partnerships that I really want to gain this year. First 3 months, I want to dig into more federal partnerships. How can I connect with AAPI organizations, LGBTQ plus organizations, Latinx organizations that support federal employees, right? And ensure that I am, staying true to my diverse content and storytelling. I think tapping into these organizations would help a team of one and some scrappy folks really share these stories. In the next 6 months, academia, right? If I'm going to be sharing pathways into government, I want to make sure that I have the next generation of public servants there to readily apply to fellowships, job postings, and hear these stories. Then last but not least, state and local, right? For the same reasons I want to tap into federal, but you can only do so much with your time. So they're coming in at the 1-year mark. Volunteers, definitely got to take this opportunity to ask for some help, right? I wouldn't even consider myself a content expert, but I'm definitely not a video editing expert. This requires a lot of creativity and a lot of skill set. I need all the help I can get. I want to try some things, and hey, I'll learn from it and we can pivot, but definitely can't do it alone. Outreach and marketing. One, this is a great opportunity just to spread the word, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, now more than ever, some positive stories about public service is definitely needed. The next 6 months, if I want to get to this summit, I'll probably need some sponsorships. Squarespace hosting isn't free, and research, as I mentioned, I have a day job. Who can maybe lead some research discussions to really find out what the barriers are, what the opportunities are to really move in that diversity needle within government leadership. And then last but not least, at the 1-year mark, event planning. How can I bring this summit to life? And how can I get some help coordinating all these volunteers that I've asked for? So this is what 2023 is looking like. How can you help? Nominations. I did a shameless plug a little bit earlier. The website's easy to find, the form's super easy to fill out. If you could just flood that with a nomination, with nominations of public servants, federal, state, local, that you think are doing a great job and are passionate about public service and have a great story to tell, please pull that website up, fill that out if you get a chance, and that'd be a really big help. Volunteer. We're looking for people that love people, right? This is the people business. Let's identify some folks that are willing to chat with others on, potential partnerships to expand our reach with those organizations that I mentioned earlier. People that are willing to follow up with some of the candidates to see if they're truly interested in telling their story and if they need any help getting it done. And then someone that can help us with sponsorship and identifying volunteers. All of that would be extremely helpful if people have the time. And then last but not least, introductions. Is there someone that I should know? Is there someone or organization that should be familiar with humans of public service that are, passionate about similar things and, the mission may fall near and dear to their heart? I'm totally open for a conversation, a virtual coffee or what have you to explore those opportunities. But nominations first, volunteering and/or introductions to people I should know, that'd be supremely helpful. Last but not least, thank you so much for this opportunity and listening to me. I hope I didn't put you all to sleep and you're still awake, but if you have your mobile phone handy, feel free to use this. Gosh darn it, my brain has taken a little break. Yeah, there you go, QR code. Feel free to use the QR code to follow us on LinkedIn. That would also be supremely helpful, but you can find my LinkedIn account right here at the bottom. You can also find my email address at Humans of Public Service if you need to reach me. I'll get back to you after hours. But yeah, this has been an amazing opportunity. Thank you so much.
So Brian, I just want to assure you that we're still all awake. It's truly inspirational. And I, for me, and we spoke about this the last few weeks, but, I came up in a time when I'll just say, the military, there's no way that I would even think about doing this, much less have the courage to move out. I'm just curious, where does that come from? It's like, do you look at, how do you look at that? And how do you, you're definitely inspiring me. I'm going to volunteer for you.
It's a really tricky thing. I think now more than ever, I feel like there's a time for action, right? There's a lot of sort of performative, commitments that have been made. And I think not enough necessary action or support that's been provided, right? And there's a lot of energy. I have a lot of energy. I've associated with a lot of people that have similar energy. And, it's a time to try a thing, right? To take that chance. What's the worst that can happen? What is the cost if you don't try, right? Things will stay the same. And if you want to see something different, if you want to realize that change, somebody's going to have to move. So I felt like I had the opportunity. I saw the lane. It wasn't foggy. It wasn't unclear. And I took the chance, and fortunately, the response has been overwhelming,
Yeah, I think you've struck a chord, and it's so simple and elegant. And I think that's the magic. that whole human-centered design. Marlena taught me that, by the way, y'all. But there was a question from Justin Cole, and I think I'm kind of in the same space that Justin is thinking in. So let me first start with you, right? So when you told your leadership, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, What was the reaction, and did they sit down with you and establish some fundamental, hey, here are the rules of the road for us to support you?
Yeah, so I would say this is hard for me. This conversation, I was so nervous, right? And I think the reason why I was nervous is because it all starts with legal. And if anyone's led a project where they've had to discuss with legal, you realize you're usually starting at a point of no and having to work your way up to yes. And this is like inherently governmental, right? We are compliance focused, risk avoiding types of people, or that's the culture that we're placed within. So I was extremely nervous about this conversation, but what I decided to do was, this type of thing is much better to be put on display than explained. I didn't have all of the language at first of what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, the outcomes that I anticipated, but I knew what I was gonna be doing, and that was sharing these stories, right? I could at least at a high level talk about why. So I did it first, and then showed them. I said, hey, this is okay, right? And they're like, well, as long as you aren't doing this on government time using government equipment, and you aren't stating FDIC is in sponsorship of this or your job title, then I think you're okay. So that first conversation has gone well. It's continued to go well. But I will say, every time I get one of these speaking opportunities, I do get a little bit nervous. Like, is this too far? How far am I pushing them? But I'm going to keep trying.
Hey, celebrating public service, in my opinion, you can't go too far. So, hey, and then to follow up on that, Justin asks, what about the people who are featured? Are you sensing that there's trepidation at the agency department level, or are people, basically being told by their leaderships, yeah, this is great, work with Brian, and this is an awesome opportunity for us to again, to celebrate some incredible people?
So you know what? I can honestly only speculate. There've been 2 instances where people have said, hey, I've got to go get approval on this. And those 2 instances, I haven't heard back from them. Then there's also, and I mentioned this earlier about like, hey, the most ideal scenario is like you nominating someone and ICC you at like hopes of, avoiding or overcoming is this spam? Is this a joke? Humans in public service, I haven't heard of this. Why would I want to be featured, right? So some of my speculation is, when I don't hear a response back, maybe these people know and or feel that they won't be able to clear agency approval, right? Or they may not know the first step to take. And is that either ethics, or is that comms, or is that my supervisor first, right? And it's tough. So I don't have a very clear data point as to how it's being received at the agency level. But if there were ever anything that I could ask people to take away from this, is that use this as a tool. Like, use this as a tool for celebration of your workforce, a no-cost form of recognition, a potential post that you can reshare of maybe a diverse hire to just show that diversity is valued within my organization. What I'd hope government agencies and organizations would recognize and or feel is that, for lack of a better phrase, it's for us, by us. Like, I'm not out here to do anything malicious or paint your agency in a negative light. I'm trying to uplift and amplify and hopefully attract more talent to you.
Yeah, I mean, incredible sentiments. you know, even, and John says the same thing, right? In his comment is like, it's a pathway to rebuild, as people start to look at government service as an option.
Mhm.
When you think about what you've learned so much and you shared so much with us today, but you know, as you talk to people and in and outside of human capital management and leaders around you, because you are in the senior executive service, I mean, what have you learned about, you know, talking about government service and, you know, potentially recruiting people that you'd like to share with everyone?
You know, I would say that we, as a group of public servants and leaders, I think we need to do a better job of tapping into the moments and or people that illuminated the pathway into public service, or that opportunity, or the realization that this is the direction I'm going to go and why. I don't think we necessarily share that enough or communicate that, right? I think more often than not, we hear we compete on the mission, right? Like we may not be able to provide the dollars, but the mission is what attracts people. And I don't think that's 100% accurate. I think it's someone met someone else that was doing a thing and they felt that thing was noble, or that they met someone who recognized that service was their life's calling and it's an honor to be able to serve, or they recognize that you know, a tragedy happens and I want to run to it rather than run from it, right? And how do we make sure that we value and understand what these moments are and sort of communicate the importance of them? Or figure out, like, okay, if there are certain people that are inspiring others to join public service, do we have a recruitment arm? Do we have like a government branding organization that focuses on the sentiment of US citizens, and this is the group that we're going to tap into to sort of be the charismatic leader or storyteller or chief storyteller that's really going to provide the counterpoint about why folks should serve? How do we tap into those people that are creating those moments and really inspiring others? So I would say we really need to unpack the why for why people are serving and sort of spread it across the states.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and of course, you know, the state and local governments, oftentimes, you know, they're just as important to this entire mission, right, of public service. So, you know, and one thing you know, we've spoken about, and John Quinn, who isn't on the line today, but and Marlena knows, we talk about this a lot in our work group, is that what you're doing, you know, essentially is recruitment at any point in your career, which I think, you know, today, you know, there are people who join the government service with, you know, saying, I'm going to stay forever. There are people who join mid-career. There are people, you know, like me, who've bounced in and out of government service. I mean, so what I find fascinating about this calling to serve, and I like the way you say that, is that, and Marlena uses this word participant, and I thought about that a lot, Marlena, you know, and there are so many ways to participate. Even supporting this effort that Brian has started is a way for you to participate in acknowledging government service. And so I say to my colleagues out there in the private sector that you're just as big a participant in this whole government thing. It doesn't happen without everyone working together.
Mm-hmm.
Supporting Brian's effort is so important to all of us as we move forward. And I think too, Brian, you know, when I think about all the people, because I've been looking at the site, you know, quite a bit in the last few months, is there any particular story that's really stood out for you? You're like, oh, wow, that is something.
Oh, there's a handful, you know, folks who come from a long line of public servants dating back to like World War II. And it is like, you know, this is maybe my immediate family business, but this is their generational family business? And like, how do we uphold and or celebrate people who for generations their family has provided service to our country? What does that even look like? Right? We have the Sammys where we sort of highlight a person or maybe a team that has done a thing in the moment in the last year. But think about 90 years of public service, right? How do we celebrate those folks? What do we even do with that? Right? The other is people specifically inspired by moments. There was one story that had probably like 10,000, over 1,000 interactions. I'll do that. Over 1,000 interactions, maybe over 10,000 impressions, but being inspired by what 9/11 did to the Muslim American community and knowing that they needed to be in government spaces to change perceptions, that's huge. That's huge, right? So I'd say those two stories are probably some of the most impactful that have hit me, right? Just generations of service and responding to moments to sort of shift the narrative. Those have been huge.
It's just great. And I know Brianna's been there patiently monitoring the chat. Brianna, is there anything you wanted to add before we start closing out here?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you just said, Brian, with another example of that is with COVID being this mass disabling event, right? We're going to start to find in the coming years that people with disabilities, visible or hidden, are going to find themselves needing to be in positions of leadership to influence the way that healthcare and their needs are being taken care of, right? That are not being represented. Right? I'm sure that the stats on people with disabilities being represented in leadership are probably very, very dismal as well. And so just another example, right, of that and how you could start pairing, as you said, these, whatever the news cycle of the day is, with the very real humans behind the scenes that are dealing with, grappling with these issues in the government, and they're doing it, that the debt ceiling has not been raised, okay? There are people at the Treasury right now who every single day, whether the debt ceiling is raised or not, are responsible for making sure our bills are paid, or monitoring the debt, or that is their day to day. And we think it's a computer, we think it's Congress, right? It's not. It's a person who sits at the Federal Financing Bank in Treasury, and that's what they do every single day. So I think that it'd be cool to start pairing those with the news cycles and sort of busting the myths, I guess.
I love that. I love that 110%. And again, this is the ask, like, help me beef up my Rolodex, like get these people nominated so I can at least respond and offer that counterpoint timely. And I think you also hit on another thing that is something I'm trying to unpack and best convey, right? Some disabilities aren't visual, right? Humans of public service drives, is driven by the picture and then the story, right? So striking that balance of how willing are people to disclose that disability or to disclose where they land on LGBTQ plus. Am I here for all of it? Yes. Do I need to figure out how to tactfully thread that needle and engage someone's interested in disclosing that? I've got to sort that, and I want to.
Yeah, Brian is just amazing.
John in here, he's saying that especially important for DEIA, that there is a little known outfit in HR solutions under the HCAT contracts called OPM Recruitment and Branding that could or should lead that idea to brand public service, proposed by Jeff Kahn, and it was done with commercials many years ago under a previous director of Spooner.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of this work that goes on behind the scenes, Brian, and what you've done is just it's perfect. John, you wanted to add something?
Only that you're saving the government so much money. For years, and I'm guilty of this. I sold a lot of LinkedIn, and I regret it now. Having worked with Capitol Police and seeing social media weaponized, but I would offer that the way we can actually rebuild trust is to do what you're doing across all agencies. And although the knee-jerk reaction is to call Madison Avenue to brand the U.S. government as a trusted, asset to our communities and being citizen-centric. I also think back to the points that Brianna made about the importance 2% by 2010 and the importance to brand for both recruitment and retention in our agencies. And what's really wonderful, and I know we've been connected on LinkedIn, Brian, is that these stories are authentic, they're genuine, and they resonate. And do not lose that authenticity, and Godspeed. Thank you for all you do. Just a hashtag love Gov. I'm with you. I appreciate you what you're doing, sir.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, John. So Brian, you get the last word before I have to close it out.
All right. Hopefully it can be a couple words. Nominate, tell a friend, follow if you can. And thank you so much for having me.
Brian, consider ACT-IAC. You're gonna have to put that on your next slide the next time you do that, right? So I got that in, Nancy. Hey, so this has been great. Brian, thank you again. We all really appreciate it. And if you thought this was good, there's a program March 23rd, which Marlena is going to lead, which is the ABCs of recruiting Gen Z. And so I'm a Gen old, so I don't know what, so I'm really looking forward to that, but that'll be a great conversation. So again, thank everyone for joining today, and thanks for the questions and a great conversation. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, parents.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Bye.